Hey guys, so I said that I would do an analysis. Got a friend Kiminal on the chess.com forum who's saying that they're having some trouble progressing beyond, where's that, the 700 kind of mark at the moment. So I offered to analyse one of the games. So here's one that was suggested, and the opponent is from India, rated 750. So let's dive straight in. So Kiminal is playing with the black pieces. White starts with d4, the queen's pawn opening. Black responds d5. So far so good. White follows up with e3, which is quiet. c6 with the knight is a good start. It does invite the bishop to come in. But the thing is, when see, white has their pawns on the dark squares, so this pawn chain is on the dark squares right now. What that means is that white's light squared bishop has got lots more movement around the board than the dark squared bishop. So I think that white would be ill-advised to swap off their light square bishop right now, particularly as it's the only developed piece on the board as well. So I think, we don't need to worry about defending the knight. I think capturing with the b pawn would be absolutely fine in this case. White then comes out with a slightly odd move, moving the knight to the rim. Knights to the rim are dim. Is probably tempting black to capture the knight with the light squared bishop and then recapture, which would leave white's king side pretty open. White would then have to castle queen side, but you've got three pawns still there. That's not a problem. Black declines the offer, which I think is probably wise. White then comes in with the knight into f4. If that was the plan all along, it could have gone via e2 as well. But you have to wonder, what is this knight doing there? He's just moved one piece twice instead of taking the opportunity to maybe bring out his other knight or even the queen possibly. So in terms of development, we're kind of equal right now. Black responds, bringing out a knight, good move, and is eyeing up this very nice looking e4 square as well. And then white now moves his knight back, which is not very good play. So he's really just thrown away two moves, two tempi. Black plays another good move, another good developing move, bringing out that bishop to d6. That's eyeing down on h2 now. So if white has ideas about castling kingside, then these bishops are going to be pretty useful. This bishop could dive straight in, capture that, and expose the king. White plays a quiet move, just bringing the queen forward to d2. Black decides to castle kingside, and maybe didn't have to castle yet in the game. I might hold off a little bit later to see what white's ideas were, but that's absolutely fine. And now white goes in for that for castling kingside also. Now what I would do at this point is I would seriously be considering capturing that knight on h3. The pawn would be forced to retake, and that would leave the king very exposed. And you've got ideas of the knight coming in, opening up the path for the queen to come through, with checks and all that kind of stuff. So what does black do? Tries to kick the bishop away. Bishop gets kicked away where it can. It wasn't really threatening too much at that point on that side of the board, but now it can come in to the defense. So I don't think that was a necessary move. Black spots the excellent e4 with a knight. That's attacking the queen, forcing the queen to do something. The queen just simply retreats. Again, pretty quiet there. And now this is just a blunder. And when you've got 20 minutes left to think, you should really be, you should take this piece and say, okay, that's my idea, and hover there. Don't let go, and just say, is there anything stupid about this move before I commit to it? Oh, it can be taken by the pawn, then you put it back, right? So it simply just didn't need to make that mistake. I'm sure it was a mistake. I can't see any purpose in that move particularly. Getting this pawn out of the way so the bishop can take it, I don't really see the point. It has to just be a blunder. Pawn snatches it. Bishop comes in. I mean, this is not a terrible position. We're now a minor piece down for a pawn. It means that if this dark squared bishop ever decides to leave its post, then black's dark square bishop can come in, grab the pawn, and then the rook. It's not a bad central position. White then brings out his B knight. I would be tempted here as well to trade off the knights. What you would get if you take the knight there, then the B pawn recaptures. That leaves an isolated A pawn, a doubled isolated pawns on the C file as well. Definitely worth thinking about. And of course, then also the bishop can come in and grab that pawn. So you've got two pawns. So you've got your pawn up and attacking the rook. This is a decent move. Queen comes up to d6. So now the queen and the bishop eyeing up h2 there. Let's see what black does. So black decides to go for the knight exchange himself. So you can see, that was always sitting there. I would expect black to recapture with the bishop now, but of course he doesn't have to because he's got that move that comes with check. So decent move there. He's grabbed the pawn while he can. There is always a risk of this move that if the king moves out the way, that he could push then g3, trapping the bishop in and then capturing it on the next move, because now it's no longer defended by the queen. So you have to watch out for that. King has to move. Now what black should surely do here is recapture the knight, probably with the bishop, I would imagine, because that maintains the pawn structure. If he captures with the pawn, that then invites white to come and exchange queens, and then we'd end up with a gap there. But that's not too bad. But moving the queen to that, I don't see the point of that move. Yes, it's attacking the knight, but then you could have just grabbed the knight. Pawn comes in. Now the queen finally takes the knight, so you've kind of made amends for that. The queen and the light square bishop are now lined up here against c2. That's an option if you want to grab a free pawn. But what we've done now is, of course, look, because the queen's moved there and the pawn's come up, this bishop is now undefended. So black grabs the knight. White doesn't mess around and goes ahead and grabs the bishop on h2. Completely unnecessary. That just didn't need to happen. Black comes in and grabs the knight. And white recaptures. So, looking at this board, there's a 4-point material difference. White has both bishops on the board, but they are not in great shape, and the king is definitely exposed. So I don't think this is a bad position so far, but I think we have already made some significant unforced errors. There's really no reason to be down 2 pieces at this point in the game. Black decides to push up with the e pawn. That's not necessarily a bad move, because if the f pawn captures, queen recaptures, we are just opening up more space and attacking possibilities around that king. This dark square bishop as well for white is not very well placed, and these pawns aren't going anywhere in a hurry. And that's indeed what happens. Now is the point where you should really be looking to go in for the kill. So what I would play at this point would be queen g3, and then the only move is king h1. Then the queen can grab that h3 pawn. Black does not do that. Instead, just moves the rook over to e8. I think this is a slightly dubious move for a couple of reasons. One is I don't really see the idea behind it, and the other one is that it's actually blocking off the f rook there as well. a better idea may have been to bring out the rook on f to e8, and then maybe swing that rook around. Because quite often you want to be thinking about having your rooks in the middle of the board towards the end of the game. But it's the a rook that comes out to e8. White pushes a pawn for no good reason at all. And black decides to capture with the pawn rather than the queen. I would certainly have considered capturing with the queen at this point, because the queen could have taken there on e4 and then come back to g6 safely and with check, but again that's not what we get. Pawn takes, bishop comes out to attack the queen. The queen here, you'll notice, could actually take there on b2. Does black spot this? No, instead goes for a very risky maneuver and moves the queen across to f5, where it is in sight of this rook. Now, this could give white a number of options. One of them could just be to bring the bishop down here, where it's attacking this f8 rook that can't move, and discovered attack then on the queen. The queen will have to do something. In fact, the queen could probably go back to g6 and with check, and I think would probably be alright then, because she might be able to then come back and grab the bishop. So maybe that's not such a crazy idea. So we'll see what happens. The bishop comes in and snatches a pawn, and we have discovered attack on the queen. Queen comes along. This is a decent move. Queen comes along with a fork. The king is in check. The bishop can't do anything about it. The king must move or block with a rook. Now again, there's a hanging piece right here on c7. This bishop is there. White is 4 material points ahead. This would have pretty much equalized the game. I think actually black would have been in a better position if he'd noticed to capture on c7. For some reason didn't do that, decides to bring the rook to swing round, which is an understandable idea. Bishop gets the hell out of dodge. Rook comes in for a check. Bishop blocks. Now that bishop is now pinned to the king. So the queen comes into e5, where it could be taken by the bishop, but the bishop can't move because it's in front of the king. So black is now obviously threatening a serious check on there, followed by king h1, queen h3, checkmate. So what happens now? Queen moves across, defending the bishop, and the rook on f now comes to d8, which I don't really see the point of. King moves into the corner. At this point I would think about probably pushing the e pawn there to e3, opening up this diagonal for the queen to get in on the attack. But I'm starting to like white's pair of bishops here. I think they're looking quite strong. Black comes in and grabs the loose bishop. Well spotted, decent move. Queen can't recapture because the rook is covered by the by black's queen. Now at this point, is this a missed win? Now I think if you did rook takes on h3, the king would have to move to one of these two squares, at which point the queen can come into h2, and that would be checkmate. So I think that's a missed win. Instead of that, for some reason, black plays d6. I can see the point. I mean, I think the idea is to bring the rook over to h6, capture on h3, but let's see what happens. Black captures. White captures, black recaptures. Black throws the queen in, and again we've got the same situation. There is a checkmate possibility here. Black should be thinking about capture with a rook on h3. That would mean that the king would have to move to g1 or g2. If it moves to g2, then queen comes into h2, checkmate. If it goes to g1, then the queen can come across to g6, and I think that would end up in checkmate as well. So another missed win, I believe. Instead of that, black pushes the pawn, which is useful, but then we come in and it's game over. You know, so there's some good play in this game. I think Criminal has played some good chess, but you know, it all comes down to taking that time. So you know, this game is lost with 7, nearly 8 minutes still on the clock. White still has 12 minutes on the clock. White has definitely rushed some moves. Both players have. Okay, but first thing is slow down. Slow down. What are all your options on the board? In a time control like this, you have time to figure it out. This game could have been won, should have been won by black. I think this is just another one of those games that has been lost rather than won, quite honestly. Even at this point, no, it's all over, yeah, because white would have just taken there, yeah. So decent game, definitely shows promise. There's been some good chess, some good early on development, nice to see. Just as with so many other games, it's been thrown away.